The cold winds of Skyrim whisper secrets, long buried beneath its snowy peaks, their tales carried to those brave or curious enough to listen. Tonight, as the moons rise and the stars shimmer in the crisp northern sky, let the weight of the day fall away. Close your eyes and drift into the soft embrace of slumber, where dreams weave tales of ancient wonders. Eric had always been a quiet boy, the sort who preferred the company of books and the quiet hum of nature over the hustle and bustle of the taverns in Dawnstar. His town was small, nestled along the rugged northern coast of Skyrim, where the snow never quite seemed to stop falling, and the waves of the Sea of Ghosts were perpetually crashing against the cliffs. It was a place of quiet beauty, a place where stories were as common as the wind, drifting in and out of town, like the fog that rolled in from the sea. But Eric had always been drawn to one story more than any other, the tale of the Dwemer, the ancient race that had vanished without a trace. His grandfather had told him of them often, especially on long winter nights when the fire crackled low in the hearth and the wind howled like a distant wolf. His grandfather, a seasoned fisherman who had seen more of Skyrim's shores than most, spoke of an ancient vault hidden deep within the Pale, a vault where the Dwemer's secrets, artifacts of unimaginable power, still lay, untouched by time. The Dwemer were masters of machines, Eric, his grandfather had said one evening long ago, his voice rich with the weight of age. They built wonders that even the gods could scarcely understand. But they vanished, leaving behind only their ruins, their mysteries. Eric had listened closely, the stories always sparking a fire within him. It wasn't just the mystery of the Dwemer that captivated him, but the idea of finding something lost, something forgotten, something that could change everything. His heart raced at the thought of what might still lie, hidden beneath the snow-covered hills of Skyrim. One evening, many years later, while rummaging through his grandfather's belongings, Eric stumbled upon something that made his pulse quicken. A tattered, old map, its edges frayed and torn. It was worn, but unmistakable. A map to the Dwemer Vault. He could hardly believe his eyes. His grandfather had never spoken of this map, never mentioned it. But there it was, ancient and fragile, its lines leading to the very heart of the Pale, the vault. The fire crackled low in the hearth, and outside, the wind howled, as if urging him to follow the map, to uncover the secrets it promised. Eric stood for a moment, his breath catching in his chest. He felt an overwhelming sense of destiny, as if the vault, the Dwemer, had been waiting for him all along. He folded the map carefully and tucked it into his coat. There was no time to waste. His grandfather had passed away years ago, and with him, the secrets of the vault had remained locked away. But now, Eric had the key. It was time to discover the truth. The next morning, with the map tucked safely in his pack, Eric set out from Dawnstar. The air was sharp with the bite of winter, and the ground beneath his boots crunched with the cold, but he paid it no mind. The path was laid out before him, the map's markings clear in his mind. The hills of the Pale stretched ahead, their snow-covered peaks gleaming in the weak sunlight. But Eric had no doubt. He was meant to find this vault, meant to uncover what had been hidden for centuries. As the wind picked up and the snow began to fall heavier, Eric felt a thrill run through him. He didn't know what lay ahead. He didn't even know if the vault was real. But he knew this. The Dwemer had left behind more than just ruins. They had left behind something that could change everything. And he, Eric of Dawnstar, was going to find it. Eric's boots crunched in the snow as he trudged forward, the mountain air sharp against his skin. The chill was biting, but he barely noticed. The excitement thrumming in his chest was enough to keep him warm. The wind had picked up, sweeping the snow in frenzied gusts that blurred the world around him. But the map, tattered and fading, guided him like a beacon. Every step felt like a step closer to unraveling a mystery, older than even the legends of his people. The path had grown steeper, the terrain more unforgiving. The land of the Pale, once wild and untamed, now seemed to press in on him, as if the snow itself were trying to hide the secrets of the hills. The occasional ruined stone wall jutted out from beneath the snow, remnants of old roads and buildings long forgotten. Eric brushed past them, paying little attention. The journey ahead mattered more than what lay behind. Hours seemed to stretch like days as Eric made his way higher. His breath came in ragged bursts, and the sky above had begun to darken, a heavy slate gray that hinted at a storm. He paused for a moment, glancing at the map again, squinting at the faded lines and cryptic symbols. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice in his head, guiding him, telling him to trust the map, trust his instincts. They had never steered him wrong before. Ahead, the landscape was changing. The mountain slopes began to level out, and the air grew still, as though the very winds had been stilled by some ancient power. And then, there it was, a crumbled stone archway, barely visible through the snowfall. Eric's heart quickened. He had found it. With trembling hands, he cleared away the snow, revealing the entrance to a forgotten trail. The archway seemed to pulse with a faint energy, as if the very earth beneath his feet was alive with the remnants of the Dwemer's ancient magic. For a moment, Eric hesitated. He had always known that this would be a journey that would change him, but standing here, at the threshold of something so old, something so powerful, made him feel small, in a way that words could not describe. But the pull of discovery was stronger than fear. With a final glance over his shoulder, he stepped forward into the depths of the mountain. The trail wound through the hills like the forgotten veins of the earth itself. The snow was deeper now, and the ruins had grown more frequent, their shapes strange and unfamiliar. Tall stone obelisks carved with symbols Eric couldn't even begin to decipher. The deeper he ventured, the more the air seemed to hum, as though the land itself were speaking a language he could not understand. As Eric continued along the path, the snow started to fall heavier, covering everything in a blanket of white. The wind howled, rattling through the trees like the distant call of some great beast. The weight of the storm pressed down on him, but still, he pressed on. The trail was treacherous, winding through jagged rocks and icy slopes, but Eric had made up his mind. There was no turning back. It was then that he saw it, just barely visible through the swirling snow, a faint glimmer of metal caught in the pale light. His heart skipped a beat as he made his way toward it, his steps quicker now, his breath short and sharp. The gleam of metal grew brighter as he drew closer, until he stood before it, a massive stone door, its surface etched with intricate Dwemer runes. It was a relic of a forgotten time, an entrance to a vault that no one had seen in centuries. The Dwemer vault loomed in front of Eric, its stone door standing as an unyielding testament to a forgotten age. As he approached, the hum of the ancient stone seemed to grow louder, as if the vault itself were aware of his presence. The map, now soaked with melted snow, had led him here, through snowstorms, over treacherous terrain, to this hidden door that had stood untouched for centuries. Now, standing at its threshold, Eric felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. The stone door groaned, as if awakening from a long, deep slumber. It shifted ever so slightly, just enough to allow Eric to slip inside. A rush of cold air greeted him, as though the very breath of the vault had been held in for far too long. He stepped into the shadowed interior, the lantern flickering in his hand. The silence was absolute, and yet, the deeper he went, the more he felt a strange presence, as though something was watching him from the shadows. The walls were lined with symbols, circles and triangles, spirals and cogs, each telling a story that Eric could not yet understand. The craftsmanship was exquisite, so finely detailed that it seemed impossible to believe that these walls had been untouched for so long. As Eric ventured deeper into the vault, he found himself in a vast chamber, its ceiling so high that it seemed to disappear into the shadows. There, in the center of the room, stood a massive stone platform. Atop it lay the remains of a Dwemer machine. Frozen in time, its gears and cogs tangled together in an intricate web of mechanical beauty. Eric stepped closer, his breath catching as he examined the machine. He had read of such contraptions in old books, but seeing one up close, so perfectly preserved, sent a shiver down his spine. It was as if the machine itself had been waiting for someone to come and awaken it. Eric's fingers hovered over the surface of the machine, tracing the markings etched into the stone. His heart pounded in his chest as a faint hum filled the air, a sound so low it was almost imperceptible. The lantern's light flickered in time with the vibrations, casting long, eerie shadows across the chamber. With a steadying breath, Eric pressed a button hidden among the cogs, and the hum grew louder. The ground beneath his feet trembled as the machine slowly began to move. Gears turned, one after another, their metal teeth grinding against each other. Dust fell from the ceiling as the room seemed to come alive around him. Then, with a final, resounding click, the machine stilled, leaving the room in a tense, uneasy silence. A voice echoed from the depths of the machine, its tone calm and soothing, yet unmistakably ancient. "Welcome," it said, its words reverberating through the stone. "You are the first to awaken us in many ages." Eric stood frozen, the weight of the voice pressing against him. It was neither human nor mechanical, but something in between. The voice continued, explaining that the Dwemer had not simply vanished, as many believed. They had transcended their physical forms, becoming something more than mortal, leaving their vault behind as a place to preserve their legacy. The machine spoke of their power, their mastery of the stars, and the cycles of the moons. Eric listened, captivated by the depth of their knowledge, his mind racing with the possibilities of what such power could mean for the world of Skyrim. The machine's words were like a spark, igniting a fire in his soul. This was not just a vault of forgotten treasures. It was a library of ancient wisdom, a bridge to an unimaginable future. But even as Eric absorbed the incredible knowledge, a warning echoed through the vault. "The price of this knowledge is great. Take it with you, and you will be changed. Leave, and forget all that you have seen." The weight of the choice settled heavily on Eric's shoulders. He had always known that the Dwemer were different, their achievements beyond the understanding of most mortals. But now, as he stood at the crossroads of fate, he understood that the knowledge they had left behind was both a gift and a curse. What would it cost him to carry this knowledge into the world? The vault stretched before Eric like the yawning mouth of a great beast, the entrance now a shadowed threshold that beckoned him deeper into its ancient heart. His lantern flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, bringing to life the forgotten whispers of the Dwemer. The air within was thick with the scent of dust and stone, But there was something more, something electric, as though the vault itself still held its breath, waiting for him to step forward. His footsteps reverberated in the silence as he passed through the entrance, the hum of the vault growing louder with each step. The vastness of the place seemed to stretch on forever, the stone walls adorned with carvings of long-forgotten machines and intricate symbols, each one telling a story he could never fully understand. Eric's fingers brushed the cool surface of the nearest wall, tracing the curves of the ancient markings, feeling the weight of history in his touch. It was as if the vault was not simply a structure, but a living testament to the Dwemer's ambition, their drive to create and control. The deeper he ventured, the more alive the vault seemed to become. The silence pressed against him, suffocating and yet comforting, as though it held its breath in anticipation. Eric's heart beat faster, the weight of the discovery settling on his shoulders. This place, this forgotten corner of the world, was more than just a ruin. It was a door to the past, to a time when the Dwemer's machines roamed free and their knowledge flowed like a river through the veins of Tamriel. He passed through narrow halls and vast chambers, his eyes drawn to every flicker of movement, every change in the shadows. Yet nothing stirred. The vault was still, but not empty. The air buzzed with something intangible, a presence that seemed to be watching him from the shadows. Eric's lantern wavered as he rounded a corner, revealing a long hallway lined with statues. They stood at attention, perfectly still, their features carved with such precision that they seemed almost alive. Dwemer warriors, their faces frozen in expressions of determination and strength. Their armor, once shining with the glory of a forgotten age, was now dulled with time, but still held the unmistakable beauty of a craftsmanship that could never be replicated. As Eric walked past them, a chill ran down his spine. It was as if their eyes followed him, their stone gazes filled with silent judgment. He dared not touch them, but there was a strange allure to their stillness. They were the Watchers, the guardians of the vault, their purpose long lost to time. And yet, Eric could not shake the feeling that he was not alone here. He continued, his mind racing with the implications of what lay ahead. What had the Dwemer left behind in this place? What secrets had they hidden within the walls of their vault? The possibilities seemed endless, each step bringing him closer to answers, to a truth that could change everything. As Eric pressed on, a low hum began to fill the air. At first it was barely noticeable, a vibration that tickled the back of his mind. But as he drew closer to the heart of the vault, the hum grew louder, until it was a steady pulse that seemed to resonate with the very stones beneath his feet. And then, as if answering his unspoken question, a sound broke the silence. A low, rumbling growl, echoing from deep within the vault. The sound was distant, yet unmistakable. It was a mechanical noise, a grinding of gears, the awakening of something long dormant. Eric stopped dead in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. The vault was not just a tomb of stone and dust. It was a living, breathing entity. The Dwemer had not simply left behind their treasures. They had left a part of themselves, a piece of their power, locked away in this place. And now, it was stirring. Eric's footsteps echoed through the dim, silent vault as he pressed onward, the eerie stillness thick in the air. The Dwemer statues, once unmoving, now seemed to flicker, their forms briefly shimmering as if caught between two worlds. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, playing tricks in the dim light. But then, one of the statues moved, just slightly, its metallic hand twitching as if it had been disturbed from a long slumber. He froze, his heart hammering in his chest. The moment was brief, and when Eric blinked, the statue was still once more, its cold stone gaze staring unblinking into the dark. He took a cautious step forward, barely daring to breathe, his mind racing to understand what was happening. The vault was not empty. These statues were not just lifeless guardians. They were something more. As he ventured deeper into the chamber, more statues came into view. Rows of Dwemer warriors frozen mid-step, poised to defend a long-lost treasure, or perhaps to protect something far more ancient. Some of their faces were inscrutable, while others wore strange expressions, their features half-finished, as if time itself had abandoned them. And then, as if to confirm his fears, another statue shifted. This time, it was not a subtle movement but a deliberate one. The warrior's head turned slowly, and its eyes, hollow and dark, locked onto Eric. A soft whirring sound filled the air, mechanical and unnerving, and Eric's pulse quickened. He had heard tales of the Dwemer's guardians, machines and automata designed to protect their secrets. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He was not alone. The statues were more than mere relics. They were sentient, aware, and perhaps even alive, in a way he had never imagined. Without warning, the silence shattered. The floor beneath him rumbled, and from the shadows emerged a figure, taller than the statues, its shape outlined by the faint glow of Eric's lantern. It was not a statue at all, but a Dwemer automaton, its body made of dark metal and etched with symbols that pulsed with a strange light. The thing stood perfectly still, like a hunter waiting for its prey, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intelligence. Eric's breath caught in his throat. He had heard stories, but they were just that, stories. Now, facing the Dwemer's silent guardians, he realized how little he truly understood of their world. The automaton moved closer, its gears grinding as it took slow, deliberate steps, its metal limbs creaking with the weight of centuries. He didn't dare make a sound, unsure whether the guardian would perceive him as an intruder or a mere visitor. He was trapped in the heart of a forgotten vault, surrounded by machines of unimaginable power. And yet, despite the fear that clawed at his chest, Eric felt a strange pull, a sense that these guardians, this vault, were not enemies. No, they were protectors, keeping the treasures and knowledge of a lost age safe from the outside world. The air in the vault grew heavy, and Eric's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle that had led him here. What was it that Dwemer had left behind, and what was it that he had stumbled upon? Was he truly meant to uncover their secrets, or was he simply a pawn in a long-forgotten game of cat and mouse? Before he could dwell on the thought, another sound broke the silence, a deep, rumbling growl from the depths of the vault. Eric's eyes widened as he turned toward the source of the noise, his heart leaping in his chest. Something was waking, something far greater than any of the machines or statues around him. Whatever it was coming for him, and the guardians were no longer simply watching. They were preparing to defend it. The ground beneath Eric's feet trembled, and he realized, with growing horror, that the vault was alive with more than just the echoes of the past. It was stirring, awakening, and he was at the center of it all. The heart of the vault pulsed with a strange, otherworldly energy, the hum of the massive Dwemer machine vibrating through the stone floor beneath Eric's feet. His breath caught as he reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the glowing filigree that adorned the machine's surface. For a moment, the vault seemed to hold its breath with him. He could feel the weight of centuries pressing upon him. This machine was no mere relic. It was alive in a way Eric could never have imagined. The controls beneath his fingertips thrummed, warm and powerful, almost as if the machine was aware of his presence, aware of the very touch of a mortal hand. His mind raced with questions. What was it? How had it survived all these years? And what power lay dormant inside? His heart beat faster with each passing second, his curiosity urging him closer, despite the creeping unease at the back of his mind. A low, soft noise broke through the stillness, a whirring sound, almost imperceptible, echoed from deep within the mechanism, like a forgotten breath coming back to life. The gears and cogs, frozen in time for so long, began to creak and groan. Slowly, the machine stirred. The golden and silver filigree shifted with a sharp click, like the stretching of a long-forgotten muscle. Eric's breath caught in his throat. The room, once thick with the staleness of untouched centuries, began to feel warmer, as though the very air itself was stirring with life. The sound grew louder, the metal groaning as if awakening from a deep slumber. He stepped back instinctively, a cold shiver running down his spine. Whatever had just started, he knew he could not stop it now. The machine's surface rippled with ancient symbols that Eric could barely comprehend, glowing faintly in the darkness. As the light intensified, the air grew thick with an almost electric tension. And then, a voice, low, deep, and soothing, rose from within the heart of the machine. It was not a voice Eric had expected. It was neither mechanical nor cold, but full of life, warmth, and an unsettling depth. "Ah, a mortal," the voice said, its tone calm and deliberate, like the whisper of wind against stone. "You have touched the heart of our creation, and now you must listen." Eric stood frozen, his eyes wide, his breath coming in shallow bursts. The words seemed to echo through his mind, reverberating in ways he couldn't quite understand. The voice continued, seemingly aware of his shock. "We are the Dwemer," it said, "and though our bodies have long since crumbled into dust, our minds remain, preserved in the very bones of this vault. You stand at the crossroads of time, where the past and future meet. Will you walk away, leaving our legacy to fade into oblivion? Or will you take the knowledge we have offered? The choice is yours, but know this, once you choose, there is no turning back." The machine hummed louder, the glow of its filigree brightening until Eric's eyes stung. It was a voice filled with centuries of wisdom and regret, a voice that seemed to know the very thoughts that ran through his mind. The weight of the decision pressed upon him, with an intensity that nearly made his knees buckle. What had he uncovered here? Was he prepared to carry the burden of the Dwemer's knowledge, or would he leave it all behind? The vault was alive, a heart pulsing with the ancient magic and knowledge of the Dwemer. In that moment, Eric realized that his journey had never just been about the vault, or even about treasure. He had stumbled upon something far more powerful, something that could change everything. But at what cost? The voice seemed to wait for him, patient but unyielding. The flickering of the machine's lights grew more erratic, as though urging him to decide, to step forward into a future unknown. And in the stillness, Eric could feel the eyes of the vault watching him, as if the very walls were waiting for his choice. His hand hovered above the controls again, and though fear tugged at the edges of his resolve, there was something else, an irresistible pull toward the machine, toward the promise of knowledge, of understanding. He had come this far. Could he truly walk away now? The faintest whisper echoed in his mind, almost as if the machine itself had planted the thought there. Choose wisely, mortal, for the stars themselves watch your every move. Eric silently chose knowledge. The machine groaned, its ancient gears turning with a sound that seemed to vibrate deep in Eric's bones. The walls of the vault trembled ever so slightly, as if the very structure itself had been waiting for this moment, this stirring of life. Eric stepped back, his breath caught in his throat, and watched in awe as the great Dwemer contraption slowly began to unfold. Metal plates shifted, revealing hidden compartments and glowing, crystalline cores that hummed with power. A voice echoed from the machine, deep and resonant, filling the chamber with a warmth that contrasted the cold stone around him. It was not the voice of a man, but of something ancient, something timeless. Eric felt a shiver run down his spine, not from fear, but from a sense of awe and wonder. "Ah, a curious one," the voice said, soft but clear, like the whisper of wind through an ancient forest. "You have awoken us, mortal. You have come for the knowledge of the Dwemer, yes?" Eric's heart raced. He couldn't bring himself to speak, so he nodded instead, still not quite believing what was happening. The vault had come alive with purpose, and he, Eric of Dawnstar, was at its center. We were the masters of time, of space, of the very fabric of existence itself, the voice continued. But what we sought, it came at a cost, a price none could pay. Eric felt a weight settle upon him, as if the air itself grew heavier. He knew the stories, the Dwemer, the lost race, the scholars and adventurers who had searched for answers, only to find themselves as lost as the ruins they sought to uncover. But hearing the words of the Dwemer, of a mind that had transcended the very nature of time, was unlike anything he had ever imagined. "You wonder, don't you, Eric?" the voice said, as though reading his thoughts. "What happened to us? Why we are no longer of this world? The truth is, we did not vanish. We evolved. We became something greater, something beyond flesh and blood." The words hung in the air like a riddle, and Eric felt a twinge of uncertainty in his chest. Had the Dwemer truly transcended death? Or was this just some strange trick of the mind? But the more he listened, the more he realized that the answers were not simple. There was no easy explanation. There was only the pull of a truth that beckoned him forward, deeper into the machine's mysteries. Time is not what you think it is, Eric. It is not linear, not bound by the simple passage of moments, the voice continued. We learned to manipulate the flow of time itself, bending it to our will. We could see the future, and we could reach into the past. But such power, it corrupts. And so, we sealed ourselves away, hidden from the world we once knew. Eric's mind raced as the weight of these words settled on him. The Dwemer had not disappeared. They had hidden themselves away, choosing to leave behind a legacy of knowledge rather than rule over the world they had once conquered. And now, this knowledge, this unimaginable power, was before him. But as the machine's voice grew quieter, the air around Eric grew thick with something else, a sense of foreboding, of something ancient and unfinished, lingering just out of reach. The contraption continued to stir, its gears turning ever faster, and the faint glow of its crystalline cores brightened, casting strange shadows upon the stone walls. You must decide, Eric, the voice intoned, as though preparing for something that had long been foretold. The knowledge you seek comes with a price. Will you leave this place and forget all that you have seen? Or will you carry this burden and let the power of the Dwemer flow through you? Eric's hands trembled as he reached out, fingers brushing against the cool, metallic surface of the machine. A hum pulsed beneath his fingertips, like the heartbeat of a world far older than his own. The choice before him was clear, but the consequences were not. He stood at the crossroads of fate, unsure of which path would lead him to the answers he sought, and which path would lead to his undoing. The hum of the machine reverberated through Eric's chest, deep and ancient, as if the very heart of the Dwemer vault had awoken alongside him. The voice, soothing and filled with a knowledge that stretched back millennia, seemed to caress his thoughts. But even as he listened, a creeping unease began to settle in the pit of his stomach. The vault, its wonders, and the power contained within the ancient machines, it was all more than he had ever expected. And now it was asking something of him. "You have come far," the voice said, its tone patient, as if it had seen countless souls pass through this same trial. "But the knowledge you seek is not without cost." Eric's hand shook, not just from the awe he felt, but from a gnawing fear he couldn't quite place. The machine's words were not a warning, but a fact. The Dwemer had left behind more than just artifacts. They had left behind their legacy, an understanding of the world that transcended time, a power that could shape reality itself. "I cannot simply give this to you," the voice continued, its tone soft but firm. "It is not for mortals to wield lightly. The question you must answer is simple. Will you take this knowledge, knowing that it may change you, or will you leave it behind, safe and untouched?" Eric's breath caught in his throat. He thought of his family, his village, his simple life in Dawnstar. The choice seemed impossible. On one hand, the vault promised secrets, the kind of knowledge that could change the very fabric of the world. On the other, he knew the dangers of tampering with forces beyond understanding. The Dwemer had not just vanished, they had transcended. What if this knowledge, this power, was too much for him to bear? A shiver ran through him, but it wasn't just the cold of the vault. It was something else, a strange sense of destiny that urged him forward. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. But then, he thought of the things he had learned so far: the clock, the moons, the stars, and the burning curiosity inside him flared brighter than ever. "I choose to know," Eric said, his voice low but firm, echoing in the vast chamber. The machine seemed to pause for a moment, as if weighing his answer. Then, with a soft mechanical whir, the gears began to turn once more, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The voice, now filled with a hint of something almost pleased, spoke again. "Very well, but understand this, Eric of Dawnstar. The knowledge you seek will not be free. It will bind you in ways you may not yet comprehend. Your journey will change, and you will never be the same." Eric nodded, even though he wasn't sure what that truly meant. His mind, already racing with questions, was now consumed by the realization of the weight of what he had just agreed to. The machine before him shimmered and whirred, its ancient cogs spinning with newfound energy, and Eric felt the faintest pull toward it. He stepped forward, his hands now steady, and placed them on the gleaming surface. It appeared to be some type of timepiece. The moment his fingers made contact, the world around him seemed to shift. The hum of the machine grew louder, and his surroundings blurred. The walls of the vault, the statues of Dwemer warriors, all seemed to dissolve into a swirling vortex of light. The machine called the ancient relic the Clock of Lunations. Its intricate patterns and shifting symbols began to pulse, its glow expanding, filling Eric's vision with a brilliance that was both blinding and mesmerizing. He saw the stars, their movements, their connections to the very fabric of Tamriel, their cycles as ancient as the world itself. The Dwemer had not just mastered machines, they had harnessed the power of time and space bending them to their will. The clock was no mere tool. It was a gateway, a map to understanding the universe. And now, it was Eric's to unlock. But as the visions began to fade and the light dimmed, Eric could feel something new, something vast, stirring within him. It was not just knowledge. It was the weight of centuries, of a civilization long gone, but not forgotten. The power of the Dwemer was within his grasp, but so was the potential to lose himself, to become consumed by it. The machine's voice, now softer, returned. Remember this, Eric. The past is a powerful force, but it must not control you. Use the knowledge wisely. And with that, the vault seemed to settle back into silence, the hum of the machine quieting once more. Eric stood in the heart of the Dwemer's legacy, a mixture of awe and fear swirling within him. He had chosen, but now he would have to live with the consequences. And now, Eric was part of that story. He was the one who would carry the knowledge of the Dwemer. He could feel it coursing through him now, a power that was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was now all over. Eric made his way back outside the way he had come. Although his world was the same, he would be forever changed. Eric stepped out of the vault and into the chill of the Skyrim night, the world around him alive with the hum of the mountains. The wind howled like a restless spirit, but it felt different now, less like a warning and more like a call. He could feel the weight of the Dwemer's knowledge thrumming in his chest, an unfamiliar electric pulse that seemed to resonate with the very bones of the earth. He held the clock of lunations carefully, as though the fragile artifact could shatter with the wrong touch, though its delicate engravings now felt warm against his fingers. As he made his way back through the mountains, the eerie silence of the vault seemed to linger, echoing in his mind. The voice of the Dwemer machine still whispered to him, though it had grown quieter as he ascended into the cold night. The secrets he'd learned weighed heavily on him, knowledge that stretched across the heavens themselves, like invisible threads binding the stars together. But with each step he took away from the vault, Eric knew that the world had shifted beneath his feet. The vault was not just a place of lost relics. It was a door to something far greater, a future whose path Eric had unknowingly begun to walk. When he reached the edge of the mountains and saw the village of Dawnstar below, Eric paused. The moonlight bathed the land in a pale silver glow, and for a moment, it was as though the stars themselves had shifted, aligning in ways he couldn't quite understand. He turned the clock over in his hands, tracing the symbols, feeling the pull of its power. The glow from its face seemed to flicker as though it were alive, its energy seeping into Eric's very soul. It was calling him, urging him to understand it fully. But the weight of what he'd just uncovered stopped him in his tracks. He hadn't just learned about the Dwemer, their secrets, their technology, their mastery over time and the heavens. He had become part of it. It was as if a door had opened, and now Eric could see the world in a way he never had before, each moment connected to a web of possibilities that stretched far beyond his understanding. His journey had taken him into the heart of Skyrim, to the depths of a forgotten world. But now it seemed that the heart of the world itself had changed, and it was pulling him onward. He didn't know what awaited him next, but the clock in his hand whispered of answers, answers that lay somewhere far beyond the mountains, far beyond the borders of Skyrim itself. As he descended into the village, Eric felt his mind begin to work through the implications of his discovery. He had always been a quiet, thoughtful man, but now, with the weight of the Dwemer's knowledge pressing on him, his thoughts raced. What would he do with this power? How could he carry this burden without letting it consume him? The future stretched before him, uncertain and yet full of promise. One thing was clear: his path would never be the same. And as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Eric knew that the journey ahead would be unlike any he had ever imagined. The secrets of the Dwemer were not just buried in ruins. They were alive, breathing, and waiting for someone to unlock them once more. Eric's place in that story had been written, and though the path ahead was shrouded in mystery, he felt ready to walk it, step by careful step.